Now, to talk about the reunions and other stories from this weekend, we have with us Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you for coming in today, Professor.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, we heard some heartbreaking stories there about the situations regarding the families who were separated by the Korean War for so many decades. I can only imagine what they've been through for all these years. It's the first reunion in 3 years, and although there have been several others over the years, how much credit do you think the President Moon deserves for this, making this one happen? But at the same time, what does it say about the fact that North Korea allowed this to happen this time?
Yes, I think this is a very breakthrough that have been made between two Koreas, especially because it was the event that has been possible after the Panmunjom declaration, which has been made between two leaders of North and South Koreas. Maybe because there were some, comments and opinions by North Korea that if there will be no return of the female employees at the North Korean restaurants who have escaped from North Korea to South Korea, there will be no family reunion. So that was some kinds of, hurdle that we thought that North Korea argues, because North Korea thinks that the reason they escaped to South Korea is not because of their willingness, but it was just, by the, South Korean intelligence agencies, plans. They went there with knowing nothing about where they're going to. So they should be returned to North Korea. That was North Korea government's arguments. But anyhow, the family reunion has been, possible. We see, separated families coming together at Kumgang Mountain place. So I think the meaning, of course, is the meaning itself. Meeting itself is very meaningful, but the extra meaning, if I can find, is that North Korea is trying to keep the promises that it has made at the Panmunjom declaration between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, President Moon Jae-in.
This is obviously a huge deal for the families involved, but looking at the bigger overall picture, one can argue that it does not have the geopolitical consequences, particularly great, as it's the easiest demand that North Korea can give to South Korea, as it has little effects on negotiations towards denuclearization or international sanctions and so on. Do you think this is a fair criticism?
Yes, it's fair, negatively or positively. Maybe North Korea is not willingly give up its nuclear weapons, just focusing on all these kinds of subsidiary events and making the declaration of the end of Korean War, happening, which is good for North Korea, but not doing denuclearization issues. Maybe that would be, negative side that we can think of North Korean intentions. But even positively, I think North Korea is wary of giving up its nuclear weapons, focusing on some of these events like repatriations of American soldiers' remains and reunion of separate family issues, which it thinks would be some kinds of significant contribution that would make the United States concede to what North Korea wants to get from the United States. So I think in that sense there is not much progress about the denuclearization issues, which I don't think is a good posture for North Korea, because I don't think the U.S. would easily give up all the things like, declaration of the end of Korean War, lifting sanctions, all that kind of things, unless there are some significant measures by the states to denuclearize itself. So I think what North Korea has to do is not focusing on all these subsidiary issues, but, get into the, core issues, which is denuclearization itself.
And hopefully, with those kind of steps, these kinds of events can happen more freely and more openly, so more of the tens of thousands of separated families can reunite more often, and they can have some sort of peace within their families at some point, hopefully. Moving on to some other issues, though, a piece of news that came in the weekend that will have very big geopolitical implications is the fact that there are reports now coming out that Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit Pyongyang in September for the celebrations of the 70th anniversary of the regime's establishment. Now, if it does happen, it'll be the first time in 13 years that a Chinese leader has visited North Korea. Does this news come as a bit of a surprise?
Maybe in the long term, maybe it's a surprise, but when you think of what has happened between two leaders of North Korea and China, which means that they had 3 summit meetings already, it's not a big surprise. But when you look at some big pictures, what has happened even since 2013, I mean, this is a very big event because now the two countries' relationship is completely reverted back to a normal state. I mean, 2013, that there has been Xi Jinping inauguration and the third nuclear test 1 month before his inauguration, which, I think pissed off Xi Jinping a lot. And what was really important at that time was that U.S. stance. I mean, President Obama's the United States was really experiencing economically a difficult situation, and they focused on its country economic recovery thing. But so that did not really care much about how to deal with China. So at that time, Chinese posture towards North Korea was really hardline. I mean, whenever North Korea was focusing on nuclear test or missile test, all that kind of things, China always tried to tame North Korea at the time. So that was the time, maybe from 2013 until the end of the Obama period. But after Trump came in and Trump's policy towards China changed, very hardline. So I think now, the relationship, North Korea-China relationship is, coming back to a normal relationship.
What do you make of the timing of this visit? I mean, there are many events happening around it. For example, there's the Inter-Korean Summit, the third Moon-Kim Summit that has been announced. That was supposed to happen sometime in September. There's also the Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State. His visit is also touted sometime soon as well. What message do you think this meeting with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un now sends?
Two leaders have their own interests, I think. Kim Jong-un definitely wants the backup from China to deal with the United States. Very important insurance if North Korea-US relationship and negotiation is broken down sometime. From the Chinese perspective, I think North Korea is a very important buffer state to think about its new and different strategy vis-a-vis the United States. Now China's relationship with the United States is kind of not going very well. I mean, there's a trade war issues. And at the same time, China seems to be, past from the, North Korea issues. China wants to be actively engaged in the Korean Peninsula issues, also deal with the trade war issues with the United States. So I think this time, right before Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang, and also before the Inter-Korea Summit meeting, Xi Jinping, by visiting North Korea, I think, tried to get some kinds of bargaining chip with the United States. So I think now there will be some secret deal and talk between the United States and China about the trade issues and North Korea issues, all the kind of detailed issues like the denuclearization issues, declaration of the end of Korean War issues. I think all these, detailed agenda, I think two big powers, I think, would be talking right now.
So do you think there will be big movements, perhaps, in this situation with North Korea, especially with North Korea and the US, which has kind of stalled in negotiations? Do you think there will be progress now, finally?
We don't know. We don't know what will be the outcome of it. But I think, definitely Chinese visit to Pyongyang would make some adjustment about the North Korea's posture and the US posture. Maybe North Korea wants to use China as a backup to deal with the United States, but maybe not. China, have to think about the, harsh policy by the United States toward China. If China, try to, give some backup to North Korea only. So I think China would definitely, demand North Korea leader Kim Jong-un that, hey, you have to denuclearize yourself. So maybe there will be some adjustment of, give and takes by the US and North Korea when Pompeo visits to Pyongyang.
Now, just a couple more pieces of news that came out over the weekend before we go. The US National Security Advisor, John Bolton, confirmed that Pompeo will be going to Pyongyang soon. But perhaps more interestingly, he said that Kim Jong-un had agreed with President Moon Jae-in, the South Korean president, that his regime would denuclearize within a year as soon as Kim makes that strategic decision. That's quite a claim. How seriously should we take Bolton's words, especially considering how the Trump administration does have a tendency, shall I say, to exaggerate?
I think Bolton, I think he's a very good negotiator. He has a lot of experiences of negotiations. For example, with the Libya case, he made the Libya to evacuate its ICBM completely. So I think he knows how to deal with North Korea, but it's a very hardline person. So maybe he wants to focus on denuclearizing issues to, obtain the denuclearization of North Korea right away. Maybe this is a kind of a deal between North Korea and Bolton, in a sense that when you look at the current streams of Rodong newspaper of North Korea, North Korea begins to focus not only on the declaration of the end of Korean War, but now talk about more and more about the lifting sanctions, which means that maybe North Korea wants to give some more demands to the United States and make the United States to think about what the U.S. wants at this time when Pompeo visits Pyongyang, kind of making the deal a little bit more complicated for the sake of the interest of North Korea. So I think vis-a-vis that kinds of demands by North Korea, maybe Bolton is thinking that there should be something more that North Korea has to give to the United States if North Korea wants to get the lifting sanctions from the United States. I think the 1 year timeline is coming out of this kind of context. I mean, Bolton is giving something to North Korea. If North Korea wants to get something from the United States extra, Bolton is, North Korea has to give something extra to Bolton again. So I think this is kind of, in tug of war between, Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang.
Lots going on this weekend. So one more thing, a Japanese media outlet over the weekend reported that North Korea has agreed to let a UN agency, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or the ICAO, to conduct on-site safety inspections for international flights regarding the regime's missile launches. Now that's scheduled for sometime next year, apparently. How important is this development, if this can be confirmed?
Two things. This is not something related to the CVID. This is something related to the launch of the ballistic missiles. And even this is not something related directly to the ballistic missiles, but something related to the civil aviation. So I don't think this is something that North Korea thinks it would give up, ICBM or nuclear weapons or something. No way. I think, we have to focus that ICAO is the United Nations agency. Maybe Kim Jong-un is thinking of the, opinions within the United Nations. Maybe Kim Jong-un is already thinking of his visit to United Nations in September. Maybe, trying to make public mood, international mood, very positive and favorable to him. I think this is a very good sign. Maybe Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang, make a deal, make Kim Jong-un's visit to New York possible, second summit with, President Trump possible. I think that's my prediction.
Well, thank you for coming in, Professor, and there's been lots to go over, but thank you for helping shed some light and help us understand the situation.
Thank you very much.